They mocked her at the airport, until one officer unzipped a hidden pocket and everything changed. She never said a word. She didn't need to. The emblem did the talking. Where are you watching from? Drop your location in the comments. It's amazing to see how far these stories travel. The morning rush at Logan International was like any other. Metal trays clanking, belt rollers humming, and tired passengers juggling coffee and carry-ons. Gate B3's security checkpoint was under strain, and so were the guards. People were grumpy, procedures were rushed, and no one had the time to look twice. Unless you gave them a reason. Elena Ray didn't. She stood in line wearing a plain beige coat, a scarf wrapped twice around her neck, and eyes that had seen more than any war movie dared to show. Her fingers were steady as she placed her phone, shoes, and small canvas messenger bag into the plastic tray. To most, she was just another middle-aged traveler. Ordinary. Forgettable. But some men are uncomfortable around silence, especially the kind that holds weight. The TSA agent on duty, a 20-something with too much ego for his thin mustache, glanced at her ID. Elena. Ray? Huh. You a professor or something? She didn't answer. He waved her through with a smirk and motioned to the X-ray operator. The machine beeped. Bag flag, someone called. Her canvas messenger bag had stopped mid-belt. A second. Agent stepped forward, unzipped the front pocket, and began pulling items out in exaggerated motions. Lip balm, a paperback novel, a pair of aviator sunglasses, a tea tin. Each item was placed dramatically into a tray. Traveling light, ma'am? The agent said, loud enough for people in nearby lines to hear. A chuckle rippled through the crowd. Elena watched quietly. The agent reached for the main zipper. She tensed. Inside, at the very bottom, wrapped in a faded olive cloth, was a small leather case. Smooth, hand-stitched, no bigger than a deck of cards. When the agent flipped it open, everything stopped. A deep blue velvet interior cradled a tarnished metal emblem, a crest of wings wrapped around a shield. Above it, the unmistakable mark of the Joint Special Operations Command, a unit so classified, even most in the military only whispered about it. The smirking agent's face went pale. The chatter died. Another officer, older and clearly more experienced, stepped forward. His eyes locked on the emblem. He didn't say a word, but his posture changed. Respect snapped into place like muscle memory. He looked at Elena. Ma'am, is this real? Still silent, she took out a laminated clearance card from her coat. Level 7. With a single glance, the older officer straightened. Stand down, he said firmly to the others. Return her items, now. The tray was reassembled faster than it had been scattered. The mocking agents fell quiet. One even tried to mutter an apology, but Elena had already taken her bag, slung it over her shoulder, and walked past them as if the moment never happened. Passengers stared. No one understood what just occurred, except maybe the older officer who watched her walk away with something between awe and guilt. At gate B3, she sat alone by the window. Her phone buzzed. Unknown contact. Protocol. Echo active. Await extraction. Order. She typed one word. Ready. Far above, a black helicopter passed over the city, unnoticed by the civilians below. And just like that, the ghost they once mocked had re-entered the war no one knew was still being fought. The buzzing in her phone stopped as abruptly as it had started. Elena closed the screen and slipped it back into the inside pocket of her coat. She didn't need more details. The word ready was enough, for them and for her. 27. Years had passed since she last used that word in operational context. From the window at gate B3, airplanes taxied across the runway, their blinking lights cutting through the Boston fog like searching eyes. But Elena wasn't watching planes. She was watching patterns. Military habits die hard. Footsteps, eyes, surveillance blind spots. Every shadow told a story. Every gesture had meaning. Across the terminal, the older TSA officer who had recognized the emblem picked up a phone behind the security desk. He wasn't making a call. He was reporting, to whom Elena didn't know. Or maybe she did. Back in the waiting area, she reached into her messenger bag, bypassing the obvious compartments, and pulled out a smaller pouch. Inside it was a worn, military-issue dog tag with only 5 letters etched into the metal. Rain. It wasn't her legal name, but it was the name they gave her when she was recruited. Flashback. Georgia, 1996. Fort Bragg. Black facility. Echo. The walls were darker than regulation gray. This wasn't a standard base. A younger Elena stood in front of a table while 4 men in plain black uniforms read her psychological profile. She was 27, fluent in 5 languages, top of her class in asymmetric warfare, emotionally distant, highly focused, no close family ties, no political distractions, perfect. One man placed a single item on the table in front of her, a black emblem with silver wings. "This isn't an assignment," he said. "It's a disappearance." "You mean I'll go dark? You mean you'll stop existing?" Elena didn't blink. "When do I start?" "Now." She picked up the emblem and didn't ask a single question. Present day, Boston. The boarding call echoed through the gate, but Elena didn't move. She wasn't here to fly, not really. The ticket was a signal, the terminal a waypoint. 3 seats over, a man in a janitor's uniform sat down. He didn't make eye contact, didn't smile, just placed a packet of peanuts on the seat between them. Elena picked it up, opened it, and found a thin, water-resistant paper tucked inside. 1 sentence. Echo 6 asset confirmed. Extraction via gate C19, 16-hour hours, no chatter. She crumpled the paper, ate a few peanuts, and stood up. Downstairs in the airport's service corridors, a silent black van with no plates rolled toward gate C19's auxiliary exit. Meanwhile, in Langley, Virginia, a classified alert sounded on a screen deep within an underground server vault. 1 name blinked in red. Rain. Active. An analyst stared at the name. "Sir, I thought Echo 6 was decommissioned." His supervisor leaned in. "It was, but if she's moving, something's wrong. Get me Director Voss. Now." Elena stepped onto the van without hesitation. Inside were 2 other individuals, both silent, both familiar. One nodded, the other simply handed her a tablet. The screen lit up. A photo, a military base, a file marked Ghost Training Initiative, and below it, a name she hadn't heard in over a decade. Captain J. Marks, deceased 2014. Status, reappeared. Elena's grip tightened. Someone was waking the dead, and she had just been pulled back into a game that had no name, no rules, and no guarantees, only consequences. The van sped through a restricted access tunnel beneath Logan International Airport. No chatter, no radio signals, its route invisible to civilian air traffic systems. Elena sat still, her posture relaxed, but her mind was a storm of questions. The name on the tablet still echoed in her head, Captain Jonathan Marks. Officially declared dead in a drone strike outside Aleppo, Syria in 2014. No body recovered. No trace left behind. She had read the file herself. She remembered the words incinerated beyond recovery. But the photo on the tablet told another story. It was grainy, taken by a satellite, but unmistakably him. Older, scarred, still alive. And standing at the gates of a compound marked as Ghost Training Initiative, Red Sector. Elena spoke without turning her head. "Where was this photo taken?" The woman seated across from her replied, voice steady. "Coordinates put it inside. Sector Red, Uzbekistan. We thought the entire Ghost Initiative was buried." "It was," Elena replied coldly. "I buried it myself." Flashback. Romania, 2009. Black Forest facility. The Ghost Initiative was meant to train operatives in psychological warfare, deep cover infiltration, and autonomous field decision-making. No communication, no loyalty, no command hierarchy. Just the mission. Elena was one of the architects. Jonathan Marks was one of the first test subjects. and the most dangerous. He was brilliant, unpredictable, and during final evaluations he broke protocol, disappearing into the Carpathian forest, during a simulation and resurfacing 5 days later with 2 real-world bodies and no explanation, one CIA, one GRU. That night the program was shut down. Marks was reassigned, or so they said, present, somewhere near Boston. The van finally came to a stop at a covert extraction facility. The concrete building had no signage, just one steel door and a keypad. Inside, Director Voss was waiting. Elena stepped in without pause. He didn't smile. "You're the last Echo 6, she raised an eyebrow. "And you're the last idiot still trusting field ghosts." Voss handed her a sealed envelope. "Satellite confirmed the image is recent. He's not just alive, he's moving. Last week he was spotted near the old Soviet biolab outside Tashkent. Now he's gone dark again." Elena's jaw tightened. "He was supposed to be erased." "He wasn't," Voss replied. "He's recruiting." The air between them thickened. Elena opened the envelope. Inside were photos of others, faces she recognized, operatives who were either dead or long retired. "They're calling it the Resonance Directive," Voss said. "Marks is building something? Off-grid, old methods, no AI, no comms, no trace. Analog ghosts," Elena muttered. "Exactly. And you're the only one who ever beat him in a simulation." She locked eyes with Voss. "That was before he stopped following the rules." He nodded. "Now there are no rules." That night Elena sat alone in a dimly lit operations room. Her old gear lay on the table in front of her. Covert earpiece, carbon blade knife, and a small titanium cylinder with no markings. She stared at her reflection in the blade. This wasn't a mission. It was a reckoning. And she wasn't sure if she was going to stop Marks or join him, but she knew one thing. To find a ghost, you have to become one again. The air was dry and sharp as Elena stepped off the unmarked transport plane in southern Uzbekistan. The heat hit like a wall, but she didn't flinch. She had felt worse. Done worse. The runway was part of a decommissioned Soviet airfield now repurposed for occasional, unsanctioned landings. No one greeted her. Good. She preferred it that way. By nightfall, Elena had traded her travel gear for local attire. Charcoal scarf, civilian boots, compact sidearm tucked under a folded linen tunic. She moved like someone who didn't exist, someone who hadn't existed in years. The destination was clear. Tashkent Red Sector, a labyrinth of abandoned bunkers built during the Cold War and long left to rot, but rumor said otherwise. Locals spoke of strange lights, of men without names, of bodies turning up without explanation. Inside one of those bunkers, according to intel, Marks had been seen. But he wasn't alone. He had a team. Flashback, Echo 6, Training Module, 2010. "Elena, if you think a ghost moves alone, you're wrong," Marks once told her during a simulation. "They move like memory, quiet, repetitive, always in pairs." Back then she thought it was metaphor. Now she knew. It was warning. Near Tashkent, Elena waited until dusk to make her move. The bunker was buried under decades of earth and silence, accessible only through a collapsed metro entrance 2 miles from any road. She moved through shadow like it was her native language. Inside, the air reeked of dust and chemicals, but her senses snapped awake. The walls had recent scrapes someone had dragged crates through, boot prints, one fresh. She wasn't alone. Drawing her weapon, Elena advanced silently. Her flashlight flicked once across a rusted corridor, revealing Soviet graffiti, broken cots, and a sensor. Laser-triggered. Crude. Military-grade. She crouched and disabled it. Seconds later, a figure moved past a side hall. Tall. Male. Moving. Quickly, she gave chase, heart steady. 2 turns, 1 ladder. A broken door. Suddenly, a blade to her throat. But the pressure eased. "Elena," said a voice she hadn't heard in over a decade. She turned slowly. Alexei Volkov. He was older, thinner, beard rough. But the same eyes, same scars. You're not supposed to be here, he whispered. Neither are you, she replied, lowering her weapon. You were listed dead in Riga. So were you. They stood in silence. I'm here for Marks, she said finally. Alexei's face darkened. You won't find him. I already have, he shook his head. No, you found the message he left behind. In a sealed room deeper underground, they opened an old steel locker. Inside, blueprints, outdated radio logs, and a map. On the map, 12 locations, circled in red. Underneath, written in ink, when the satellites fail, only the ghosts will remain, Alexei whispered. It's happening, Elena. Whatever he's planning, it's not just rogue, it's global. She stared at the map, then at the old comms gear next to it. No chips, no GPS. Just frequency charts. Analog, untraceable. Just like Mark, she turned to Alexei. Will you help me? He hesitated. I still owe him my life, he said. But I owe the rest of the world the truth. They shook hands in silence. Far away, in a compound beyond Iranian airspace, a man watched old footage on a monitor, grainy, black and white, time-stamped from that very night, a close-up of Elena's face. Jonathan Marks smiled faintly. Welcome back, Echo 6, he said. And the screen went dark. They didn't speak as they exited the bunker. There was nothing left to say. In silence, Elena and Alexei drove through the arid outskirts of Tashkent in an unmarked Soviet Lada that groaned with every bump in the road. Between them sat the old frequency map and a battered shortwave radio. The red-circled locations marked something deeper than targets. They were echoes, places once active, now dormant, or so everyone thought. Their destination, a decommissioned transmission outpost near Bukhara, once used to jam Western broadcasts during the Cold War, now nothing more than a shell, unless Marks had repurposed it. Alexei broke the silence first. Do you think he's building a network? Elena didn't take her eyes off the road. He doesn't need a network. He needs silence. Alexei raised an eyebrow. She clarified, if you can silence the world, you don't need to control it. The station loomed ahead, steel skeletal towers half-collapsed, bristling with rust and dead birds. The building itself was partially sunken, as if trying to bury itself in history. They entered through a side breach. Inside, dust and decay choked the air, but something was wrong. Too wrong. Fresh footprints, warm coffee in a chipped mug, and a signal, faint, pulsing in the back room. They followed the sound. In a rear chamber lined with ancient equipment, they found the source, a shortwave broadcast on 2.610 MHz, looping, one phrase over and over in Russian. The fallen are not forgotten, coordinates follow. Then a pause, then static, then coordinates, one set after another. Alexei wrote them down. Buried messages, locations, possibly assets. Or triggers, Elena muttered. Suddenly the static stopped. A different voice came on. Male, calm, American accent. Elena, if you're hearing this, you're already too close. Alexei froze. That's him, Elena whispered. Jonathan. Marks, turn back, the voice continued. Or I'll be forced to treat you as an enemy. Again. Then, silence. No loop, no static, just dead air. Back outside, the sky had turned copper with the setting sun. They sat in the car, not speaking. You think he expected us to come here? Alexei asked. He laid breadcrumbs, Elena replied. He wanted someone to find them, but not just anyone. You? She nodded. Why? She stared ahead. Because I'm the only one who can stop him without killing him. Alexei looked at her. And if that fails? Elena tightened her grip on the wheel. Then I stop him anyway. That night, they traced the first coordinate from the signal to a border town near the Aral Sea, a forgotten fishing village now choked by dust and silence. As they drove toward it, Alexei asked the question he'd avoided for hours. "Do you regret it?" She glanced at him. "Regret what?" "Leaving the unit. Disappearing. Letting us all believe you were dead." She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said, "No, I regret not staying dead." The car continued on, dust rising behind them. Far away, inside a mountain facility across the Caspian Sea, Jonathan Marks stared at a digital map. Multiple red dots blinked. One began to move. He smiled. "Elena always takes the bait," he said, and the screen zoomed in on the Aral Sea. The village had no name anymore. Once a lively fishing port by the Aral Sea, now it was a wasteland of cracked earth and crumbling homes swallowed by dust. The sea had receded decades ago, leaving only salt, silence, and skeletons, boats frozen, in dry soil like tombstones of another time. Elena and Alexei arrived at dawn. Pale light poured across rusted metal and broken fences as the wind whispered through hollow door frames. "This place feels wrong," Alexei muttered. "It died too quietly," Elena replied. They moved cautiously through the village, following the GPS to the first coordinate, a collapsed storage house. Inside, under a pile of nets and rusted tools, they found it, a metal case, old but intact. Elena opened it slowly. Inside, a reel-to-reel recorder, still functional. She pressed play. The voice was Jonathan Marks. "This is Station 0. If you're hearing this, you're on the path. But paths have prices. The sea here died because men in power refused to listen. Now they will." Click. "The next key is not in the signal, but the silence. Listen carefully." Silence. Then, a faint ticking. Then a name, one neither of them had heard in years. Colonel Valery Mirov. Elena's blood ran cold. Back in 2009, Colonel Mirov had been the Russian liaison to NATO cyberops in Prague. Ruthless, brilliant, and obsessed with controlling information warfare. Elena had met him only once, during the debrief after Operation White Signal. Mirov had offered her a deal: defect to his side and join a secretive project under the Ministry of Defense. She'd declined. The next day, her entire field unit was killed in a drone strike during a mission she wasn't informed of. She survived only because she'd been left behind to file paperwork. The message was clear. Refusal had a price. And now, Marks was invoking Mirov's name as part of his plan. Alexei stared at her. "You knew him?" She nodded slowly. "He's the reason I disappeared." "But why would Marks be working with Mirov?" "He's not," she said flatly. "Mirov's been dead since 2015. Suicide, allegedly." Alexei paused. "Unless," Elena finished the thought, "he faked it, or someone helped him." They stared at the recorder. If Mirov was alive, and part of this, Marks wasn't working alone, and his plan wasn't just about sending a message. It was about activating something buried, something global. They took shelter in an abandoned schoolhouse, reviewing what they had. Signal 1 had led them to the outpost. Signal 2, to the case and the name. What came next was unknown, except for the phrase Marks had repeated on every tape: "Paths have prices." "Why bring us here?" Alexei asked. "This town's nothing." Elena looked around. "This town is a symbol, a warning." She pointed to a graffiti-covered wall. In faded black paint, in Russian, "We drowned in silence." Marks wasn't just taunting them. He was telling a story. His story. That night, Elena dreamt of water. Deep, black water that swallowed her whole. In it, she saw the faces of the ones she'd left behind. Her team, her brother, even Marks. All silent, all watching. She woke in sweat. And outside, on the wind, a strange hum. Not a storm. Not a machine. A signal. Real. Alexei had already geared up. "You hear that?" She nodded. "Let's trace it." They followed the hum to the edge of the dried lake bed. Beneath a rotting pier, half buried in sand, was a steel hatch, marked with a radiation symbol long since faded. Whatever was beneath, it wasn't abandoned, and it was no longer quiet. The hatch groaned open like a wounded beast, its hinges resisting the intrusion. Rust flaked off in Elena's hands as she pulled it upward. A sour metallic odor escaped from below, moist, cold, and ancient. Alexei shone his flashlight into the darkness. A ladder descended into the unknown. No signal down there, he muttered, checking his gear. No rescue either. Elena nodded. Then let's not need either. They climbed down in silence, each rung echoing into the abyss. After several meters, their boots landed on solid concrete. A hallway stretched ahead, lined with broken lights, cables snaking along the floor, and old Soviet signage peeling from the walls. This wasn't just a bunker. It was a lab. The deeper they moved, the more the air shifted, cold yet humming with unseen energy. At a locked door, Elena pulled out the decoder tool she'd used in Warsaw years ago. It still worked. The door hissed open. Inside was a chamber lit by faint red emergency bulbs. In the center stood a server tower, still powered. Cables led into the walls like veins into a dying heart. And on the far wall, a photo, slightly curled and yellowed. It was her team. The same team lost in the drone strike. Except, it was dated, 2 weeks before the mission. Someone had been watching, documenting, monitoring them like subjects. Alexei was already working the terminal. Elena, this system's not just archival. It's active. It's still pinging an external address. She stepped closer. On the screen, lines of code scrolled by, encrypted but familiar. Embedded in the strings were fragments of her own voice, audio files, from past briefings, from private conversations. She felt sick. This place, it's not just a lab. It's a memory bank. It's where they stored behavioral profiles. Not just data collection, psychological modeling. She scrolled through a folder marked Dust Veil Alpha. Inside, names, faces, predictive simulations, all former agents, all presumed dead. Then came a beep. A message appeared on the screen. Welcome back, Elena. A loading bar filled. Final protocol initiated. Do you wish to unlock Phase 3? Alexei stared in disbelief. He knew we'd come. No, Elena whispered. He wanted us to. Suddenly, lights flickered. Hidden speakers crackled. Then came the voice, Jonathan Marks. The truth is simple, Elena. You don't kill a system by fighting it. You kill it by overwriting it. That's what this is. They erased me, you, us. But I preserved what they feared most, memory. This bunker is my broadcast tower, and in 12 hours it goes global. Unless you choose to stop it. But tell me, Elena, stop what? The truth? Silence returned. Elena gritted her teeth. This isn't revenge, she said. It's resurrection. Of every ghost they created. Alexei looked around. Can we stop the upload? She hesitated. Maybe, but we need access to the root core. Where? She turned slowly, eyes locking on a reinforced vault door near the back, the only place still locked. They approached the vault. It had no keypad, no interface, only a scanner. Elena pressed her hand to the panel. It blinked red, then green. The door opened. Inside was a single chair surrounded by analog monitors. The room smelled of old paper and burned circuits. On the main screen was a live feed of airports, offices, embassies, worldwide, waiting, watching. At the center, a blinking cursor and a single line of code. Execute bark signal, Dust Veil, Phase the 3. And, beneath it, an old audio file. Her voice. From 10 years ago. Saying one word, confirm. Elena stepped back. This wasn't just about secrets. It was about her. Marx hadn't built this to expose a system. He'd built it to frame her as its final trigger. The vault door hissed shut behind them, sealing Elena and Alexei in a room untouched by time. The blinking cursor on the screen pulsed like a heartbeat, waiting, daring, for a decision. Alexei read the line aloud. Execute, signal, dust veil, phase the 3-9. Everything he's built leads to this, he said. One signal, one upload. Every covert file, every classified name, every backdoor, exposed to the world. Elena stood frozen, staring at the old audio file, her own voice saying, confirm. I never recorded that, she said, her voice low. He probably pulled it from 100 briefings, stitched it together. AI voice splicing, same tech we used during operations. She nodded. So, if I say the word, it'll execute. Alexei turned toward her. What if that's exactly what he wants? What if he set this whole thing up? Not to reveal the truth, but to frame you as the one who broke the system? The room buzzed with low hums from aging machinery. On one of the side monitors, Elena saw the live stream feed from outside, security at the bunker already moving in. They had less than 5 minutes before extraction. I can erase it all, Alexei said, hands over the keyboard. Purge the brow server, kill the signal. But then it all disappears, Elena whispered. Everything we fought for, every lie, every death, gone like it never mattered. She stepped forward and placed her hand over the mic. Jonathan thought if he buried his truth in my shadow, I'd never dare let it out. That I'd be too afraid to be the villain in someone else's story. She took a deep breath. I don't care anymore. She didn't press the key. Instead, she opened the terminal, rewrote the command line. Split payload. Archive true. Delay. Indefinite. Alexei looked up. What are you doing? Storing the truth, she said, but not releasing it, not yet. Then what? She turned toward him, eyes steeled. Now, we find everyone left who's still alive. Everyone who was used. And we ask them what they want done with it. Alexei smiled faintly. Democracy by ghosts, I like it. The alarm blared. Outside, security forces breached the outer perimeter. Elena pressed the final key. The servers powered down. The monitors went dark. Except one. A single line appeared. Truth sealed. Trigger suspended. Awaiting further authorization. 2 hours later, at a secured NATO airstrip, Elena and Alexei boarded a transport jet bound for Berlin. No one said a word. She carried only one item in her bag, a silver drive containing the archive. The past didn't belong to her anymore. It belonged to everyone. 1 week later, in a dim room somewhere in South America, a former operative opened an anonymous package. Inside, a note. You were erased but not forgotten. You decide what happens next. There was no sender, but he knew who it came from. 1 month later, in an airport checkpoint in Istanbul, a quiet woman was stopped at security. They opened her bag, found nothing unusual, except an old badge with a cracked emblem. The officer stared at it for a long time, then let her pass without a word. Behind her, a new kind of silence followed. Not fear, but respect. Final line. Sometimes the most dangerous weapon isn't a gun, a code, or even the truth. It's the person you erased, who decided to come back. Thank you for joining us on this powerful journey. If this story moved you, made you think, or simply kept you watching till the end, we appreciate you more than you know. Your support means everything. Every view, every comment, every share helps us bring more untold stories like this to life. Let us know where you're watching from and what this story meant to you. We read every single comment. Until next time, stay curious, stay human,